Today we have an author and a producer, and we're going to mostly talk about her book, Energetic Athletics, Introduction to Curse Management. Mallory Kennedy, how are you doing today?
Coach, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
No problem, no problem. I appreciate you sending me your book and kind of going through that and reading that throughout this week. And like I said, it was a good, very easy read. Like I said, I mean that's always the first good appreciative part is a good easy read. But like I mean, before we get into the book and anything else, like kind of, I mean. There's a real, I mean, the easiest way to ask this is how do you end up becoming an author slash producer? Because you're involved in quite a few things.
Yes, I am. I'm an independent film producer. I make a lot of documentaries, mostly since, especially since the pandemic. We're pretty much in the documentary mode right now. We're filming with Jim McMahon from the '85 Bears. Um, he's an incredible guy, and we're right at the end of having that documentary out. And through that, I I guess it's been about 4 years of filming, and I got an up close and personal view of the magic of Jim McMahon. And it's pretty incredible to watch. You can see all the film and see interviews with him, but in person, you can really feel the difference and that he has something special about him. And as you said, I'm an author too and a writer. And when I write a lot about energy. So um, I think there was a natural progression in my work, especially with the timing of the Jim McMahon film, that I started a project that is geared specifically towards athletes. And it's called Energetic Athletics, and it's all about energy management. And energy management is basically the process of monitoring and learning how energy works and how you can use it and the principles of energy to enhance your own personal wellness and gameplay. Um, it's been a really interesting ride. And like you said, it's very straightforward information. Um, and I'm really, I see that there is a gap where athletes in particular, they're very, very good with the body, with the physical part. They're getting a lot better with the mind, with the mental toughness and belief. But as we know, there's this three-part system. It's body, mind, spirit. And spirit can sometimes make people feel a little uncomfortable because they think that means religion, but it doesn't. Spirit means energy, and we are all energetic beings. So, athletically, if we can learn how to use energy to enhance the body and the mind, because it's this one system, everything is connected, we can therefore enhance our gameplay and also protect ourselves because our personal energy actually works as a self defense system. And when you start talking about things like low energy or curses, which my new book is all about, you'll learn that things like slumps or just crazy errors and flubs that come out of nowhere are actually on the energy side of this body, mind, spirit system. And it is something that we can learn how to beef up and use on a daily basis on and off the field.
Yeah, like that's kind of what I've took from like reading your book. Like I said, I have a bunch of just things here, and that's the one thing took in was kind of the energy piece and the lack of how do I want to word this? Like I mean, I think a lot of people and your book kind of hits on it is there's a lot of negativity and people allow whether it's self-inflicted or inflicted from others. A lot of that is brought on, and a lot of that's the energy piece and the attitude and how they take care of themselves mentally. You even talked a little bit about nutrition in there, but like before, like I mean, you hit on it fairly good in the book, but like just so people can kind of understand, like, because you talk curses, hexes, like, and what that is. Generally, what would you define as a curse?
Curse is the opposite of a blessing. It's pretty cut and dry there. And a lot of times that can kind of stop people in their tracks because people understand the power of prayer and that sort of thing. But when you tell them that curses is the opposite, they're kind of like, wait a minute. But if you think about it, it's exactly what it is. When you're praying for someone, you can pray to send them good things, or you can pray to send them bad things and failure, and that's curses or hexes, whatever you want to call it. Low negative energy. When we do this, whether you want to call it praying or just sending vibes, that kind of thing, you're really sending a river of energy towards a person, place, thing, whatever you're directing your thoughts toward. And if you're, like we talk about in the book, your energy body, if you are weak, your energy is weak, what we call your shield, if your shield is weak, then that low energy is going to be able to soak in very much like a sponge, and it can become heavy and drag us down and just drain us of all of our good energy. So the point of the material is to learn how to improve the strength of your shield so that you can actually ward off low energy.
Now I have a question for that because you obviously mentioned the Detroit Lions in there and the Bobby Lane curse, and I've been a diehard Bengals fan for 33 years, and there has to be some sort of curse upon our organization. I don't know if it was Paul Brown dying. I I can't explain it because again, 33 years it's been rough. But like I'm like 'cause you mentioned a lot in the book about how an individual would remove those curses. How would like because and this is where I look at it from the sports business part of me as an organization, organizations like the Detroit Lions, the Bengals, you could argue like the New York Jets, when you constantly are changing personnel, how do you get rid of that as an or how do you look at that from an organizational perspective? Because that's really like I know that's a big question. There's no like, probably like one shoe one you get where I'm going with that that analogy that I'm losing my mind right now is, but like how would you approach that perspective of as a whole organization?
Like you said, that's a big animal. You kind of have to take one bite at a time on it. And we do talk about that in the book, how specifically with Detroit, where your fan base and their belief, which mindset, and the team, everyone, head office, everyone contributes to the team. And just as we talk about, every individual has a bubble, a shield. When we join together as a team, we also create a team shield, just as we have our own. So the mindset of everyone on that team creates the bubble and will depend upon the strength of that bubble, as if someone's continually saying, oh, we're cursed, well, then you will be, because it's all about belief. And then it becomes majority rules. If the majority of fans have a low energy and are like, oh, this is going to be tough, or if you're in the middle of the game and just like the term keeping the crowd in the game, if you can't keep that crowd in the game, you have a lot less chance of winning. And it's the same way. So with an organization, I think you would first start with education of what curses are, and that it really has to do with it starts with the individual. It starts with, at home. So you have to start with the fans and education and the team, I would say. And then you look at self-hexing, which we go into in the book, and that the reality is that curses, majority of them come from the self instead of outside. We are responsible for a lot of the bad energy we bring to us through our own karma, through our mental state, through things we interact with, our nutrition, it all has an effect. So again, when you're talking about a big corporation, I think you have to take it one bite at a time. You have to get, your personnel and your players on board, and then you have to get your fans on board to say, we're not cursed. We're going to kick this and we're not going to dwell on it. Because the more you feed the curse, the bigger it's going to get. And then if you're, let's say, deep into the season and things are going poorly and the fans are just, cursing themselves, cursing the team, you're just creating this snowball. So it's never going to fix itself. And then a lot of times I think when you're stuck, so we'll call that a slump, um, you need a spark to come. You need something that's going to flip that energy, whether that's a player or a coach, something to breathe new life in. And when you start really studying energy, you'll start to see patterns, and you'll automatically be able to see who has those energy flipping abilities in terms of recruitment, especially. Those are things that you can start pinpointing when you're looking for a person to say, okay, we need new leadership. We need somebody who's going to come in here and be that Jim McMahon during the Miracle Bowl and say, no, guys, this is a winning organization, just like he did with the Chicago Bears when he first got there. They were not winners. They had to breathe new life into that organization. And to do that, you need someone who says, I'm a winner, I'm going to win, let's do it. Because that's where it starts. It starts with belief. And then the physical ability will come. You have to have belief first.
I think the other part of it that I took from it is a lot of self meditation, or what I would describe as meditation as I read it,
Mm-hmm.
and self-talk. And I think that's something, because I deal with a lot of high school athletes, and I usually get hired at programs that struggle, to help fix them either as a head coach or an assistant. And I think that's kind of one of the things I've noticed culturally across the board as in school systems and sports programs, especially ones that historically struggle or have recently struggled. It's a lot of negative self-talk, which, as your book kind of mentions, is essentially you cursing or hexing yourself. But I see that a lot, and I think part of that's our culture because of the media, news. I think that kind of encourages that, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so from looking at it from an athlete's perspective or a coach's perspective, like what best recommendations would you have I mean, your book kind of touches on it and kind of about rewording things and fixing your negative self-talk. But like, what recommendation for any athlete or coach that's listening to this that deals with a lot of teammates or players who have negative self-talk on how to approach that portion?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And we all deal really with that self-doubt and those nagging voices. Um, Surprisingly, I would say when someone comes to me and says that that is their problem, that they're fighting those little voices in their heads all day, I first ask them what they're eating, what they're drinking. Are they on energy drinks? What what are they putting into their bodies? Like make a list, go through and make like a little food diary and start seeing where those negative thoughts are coming in. And if you start seeing a pattern, if they're connected to anything you're specifically eating or drinking, that's a good place to start because it's all connected. And our nutrition really dictates our behavior more so than we understand. And that means both inner talk and, outer talk. Um, and when we can start looking to see what type of foods, and a lot of times it's sports drinks and energy drinks that really create a lot of negative moods. And then I would say self abuse. I see that as a big problem, especially with young players. But nutrition is a great place to start. because a lot of times people don't understand that that is contributing. And if you can make some efforts to clear some of that away, even making sure you're hydrated, your moods, and like I said, and your self-talk, that will help. That's a great number one step to start with.
Okay. Now with that, like, I mean, I do want to ask you a couple more questions about the books, and then I do want to pick your brain a little bit about the documentaries because I also grew up a
Mhm.
big fan of documentaries. Um, because again, you've written several books, and
This is the third one. I have a website, it's energeticathletics.com, and you can get all of my books there, but everything's also on Amazon. But the website also has Energetic Athletics Academy, which is a self-study resource for athletes, coaches, fans, anyone who can see that energy management, like I said, on and off the field, it has benefits. And it's basically a self-study program with more action. It builds upon the books. Um, and you can go there to find guided videos and meditations also. I have everything up there.
now on top of curses and hexes, how much would you say superstitions apply into things? Because I'm a coach, and in our realm, there's a lot of superstitions, good and bad.
Yeah.
Like I use the word bad juju a lot
Mhm.
during the season, and like I have a habit like if I wear a certain apparel on a Friday and we win, guess what? I'm probably wearing next Friday. If
Yeah.
if we lose, guess what? I'm probably not wearing the rest of the year. Like, and again, like I mean, one year we wore a certain set of jerseys for a night. We were undefeated. We lost. Guess what? We did not wear that set of the rest of the year. Like it just
Yeah.
again, we as coaches get in our mind. I think players probably do too. Every player has some sort of routine. I think
Hmm.
probably a better word than superstition, but a routine that they go through. How much good and bad of that do you think applies to the energy management as well?
I think honestly, it's kind of middle of the road. I think in the beginning, superstitions really are recognizing energy patterns. That's what you're doing. You're saying, if I wear the yellow shirt, I'm getting better, higher energy. If I wear the brown shirt, I'm not. I'm going into a slump. So you're recognizing energy patterns, and that's a good thing. We want to be able to do that. Um, as you work with energy management and start to understand how to create your own energy patterns and maintain them, you will become less dependent upon superstitions to get you to the energy pattern that you're seeking, if that makes sense.
Does like I said, I
So
think
in the beginning, they are good. They're real, I would say. They're absolutely real.
I
Um,
routine
it
every year.
all goes upon belief of how much belief you're putting into that.
Well, I think like and you also hear other people talk about it. Like I scroll down Facebook and YouTube Shorts all the time, and I think who was it? It might have been Kylie Kelsey talking about her like her game day superstition. Like something happened, and she would just stick doing it the rest of the year. Like again, you associate with good and bad, and I think that's kind of what the kind of you talked about in your book was about the curses is like the Bobby Lang thing for that you mentioned there is both something he may have opposed on himself with breaking his leg, but also he outwardly directed towards the Lions and for a variety of reasons that they have not had out much success up until recently. I
Mhm.
mean, but again, still have not made a Super Bowl. It's just
It's
again,
fascinating.
yeah, it's a very interesting thing. But you could say the same thing about the Red Sox for almost 100 years,
Mhm.
the curse, and then they finally break it. Um, through a variety of reasons, including a bloody sock. But uh,
Yeah.
th
Flipping the energy. That's what
yeah,
it comes down to, is just flipping that energy. And sometimes it takes a long time to do, especially the more people are involved, I would say, the longer it'll probably take to flip it.
well, you kind of I think you mentioned LSU down was it 10-0 in the book as well, and it made me immediately think of the Red Sox game where they're down what 3 games to none, and they come back win 4 in a row, and
Hmm.
like I said, I think a lot of again part of it is as you mentioned in your book, was the individuals and the group has to believe as a whole that they're going to break that curse and or in that negative aura around them. Um, like, to, like again, I go back to the high school athlete, high school coach who takes over a place that has that negative aura. Like, and I kind of, I mean, we talked a little bit about the athlete earlier, but when you like, what suggestions would you have for coaches to focus on their players, like in the situation. Like, say an example would be like I take over a job that hasn't won a game in 3 years.
Mhm.
Like, what would your first suggestions be to a place? Because obviously that place, there's might be bad coaching, bad talent there too, but also you've now put a bad, almost a self curse on it because now the perception is we can't win or we can't do this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a struggle. How do you come and how do you be that energy flip, right? And I think that's such a difficult place to be. I would say my one of the one of the biggest elements in energy management is what we call karmic management. And that is basically straightforward karma. What you put out, you will get back, sort of thing. So, one thing, just it usually goes back to attitudes that I really stress, especially with young players, is getting back to the fundamentals of sportsmanship. And sportsmanship is actually tied to the strength of your shield. Everything really goes back to sportsmanship. And that's something that today I think is very much lacking. I'd like to get your opinion on that and what you're seeing on the ground. But I know from where I am, it's been a tough thing to watch. Last time I was home in Baton Rouge, I was watching the local news with my dad, and they had a story came on, and they were saying that they were canceling a bunch of high school football games because they couldn't get refs
Mhm.
to come officiate the games. And they said that that was because they were afraid for their safety on the field. And that was, um, it was really eye-opening that it had gotten to that level. Um, and I was surprised by that. And I think that if we are able to get sportsmanship back into the game and back as a focus for players and coaches, energetically, it shakes off all the rust. When you can start creating a positive karmic feedback for you, your team, and your players, that really refreshes your shield and what we talk about, your team shield. And that can be a jump start you need to start bringing a team out from a slump and up into a higher level. And usually with sportsmanship becomes bonding as a team unit where you're focusing on really alleviating what I would call superiority and inferiority, those types of thinking where some players are more talented and better and more important to a team than others. And that can go for personnel too. On a team, there's you are a team unit, everyone, like the quarterback, the coach, the water boy, the nacho stand attendant at the game, everyone is on a team. So that when you're talking about like a school, that's your community too. So if you can start getting your whole team bubble refreshed with energy, you will start to see energetic strides that you've never seen before. And that's because you're really clearing the way of all this negative karma and this negative energy belief system and allowing for good things to come in. And that starts, I believe, with sportsmanship and making everyone on the team feel important and that they matter. Because as we go back to self-hexing, if someone on your team feels left out or feels like they're being treated like the weak link, then that creates self-hexing for a team, not only an individual. So you really need to shore up the team boat. You plug the holes in the team boat, and that starts, I believe, with sportsmanship.
Okay. Now, the couple other things as we get close towards the end, I wanted to ask you about because you've obviously you have the whole Interject series, and then you also are again and you have a couple other books, and then you've also are producing the Jim McMahon um, documentary. I saw was it Tecmo Bowl documentary? I think I've saw on there as well.
Mhm.
Something else I saw too. I can't remember what the
We've got Full Metal Straight Jacket about the Stanley Kubrick film Full Metal Jacket.
yes.
That one's coming. And then we have a Doris Day film also for the lighter side of things.
I mean, my first question for you is how long, like, because I grew up watching documentaries and the History Channel and all kinds of other things, and I enjoy a good, but like, what is the process or like what is the typical length it is? Because we talked before we came on, and you said Jim McMahon was back to almost that started what almost in 21, 2020.
2020. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking almost 5 years to make that documentary. What does that
Mhm.
typical process of a documentary kind of look like?
Well, it really depends on the subject. We've had documentaries that have taken, 6 months or like a year or so. And then we've had monsters like the Jim McMahon documentary that, well, another thing too is that in this sense, you're dealing with a man's life. It's not just an event or, it's a man's life. So you do have to spend a little extra time. And then it's Jim McMahon's life. So it's even bigger.
Yeah.
And then also we had the pandemic to contend with. So we were filming while, everyone was in lockdown, and that was difficult scheduling wise. But our biggest thing has been actually trying to get it cleared through our lawyers because the documentary deals with CTE and traumatic brain injury, which is, people know Jim McMahon's story pretty well. He was a big hotshot superstar, but what they don't always know is what he's going through after football. And that's a lot of what the documentary is about, and a real life look at, what retiring from the NFL actually looks like. And that's like you said, you have to take a lot of care with something like that, and that takes a lot more time. So they kind of depend. It depends on the subject matter at hand, I would say.
Okay. Like I said, I've always been curious about kind of the length and because again, you have a variety of topics you've hit on. Obviously, it seems like sports are still fairly present in your life now. How much of that is tied to what drew your interest in sports in general? Because obviously you look at this, your book series is about positive energy around athletics and athletes in general, and really could just be applied to the everyday person too. But then you go obviously go to the Tecmo Bowl, then you go to Jim McMahon. What kind of pursues you to follow, like do projects related to athletics? Is it the time in Louisiana growing up? Because again, you mentioned the LSU Tigers fairly heavily in your book as well. What kind of has made that impact on you?
I can't really remember a time in my life where athletics weren't a part of it. Sports has always been there. Some of my earliest memories are of Tiger Stadium on a Saturday night and just like what that felt like as a little child in this sea of purple and gold. And like that was really where I started witnessing like miracle making energy and the power of what a fandom can really do. And, we talk about this on these big levels, but these are at smaller levels too. These are, at your Pee Wee football games and your high school Friday nights. Like it might be a smaller scale per se, but all the mechanics are the same. And I think studying energy and then seeing how everything is connected and then how that can be applied to athletics. And like I said, it's been, there's never not been sports in my life. So I think it was just a natural progression with basically, connecting the dots of how all of this works and how we can learn to utilize it for our benefit, and, have a little fun too.
Yeah. No, it's like I think again, kind of as you point out, there's a lot of great and fun and positive with the sports, but again, as we've kind of talked a little bit about as well, there's some negative, not just with the curses, but just with I mean, just fandom in general. Like you mentioned, not finding refs, and that's a problem across the country. And I think part of that's culture has created the acceptance of very negative talk towards people. And again, that creates a lot of bad, as I say, juju, in general. And it's just again, like I think when at on the best part about athletics is when you have that positivity and you can have those positive impacts and relationships and so forth from there. But like kind of as we get to the end, like from both the energetic athletics and the Jim McMahon, like let's kind of tie these together because I mean, kind of promote both. But like, how much do you think stuff like the the curses have affected? That's a bad way of wording it. That how like do you think like NFL players or professional athletes who've left athletics. So let's not just look at Jim McMahon, but just some of that they could kind of put themselves in that own realm of the negative curse part because they're no longer playing and it's just trying to find a sense of what they're doing. Do you kind of get that sense, like dealing with Jim McMahon, looking at the Tecmo Bowl stuff and being involved in kind of some of your other documentaries?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And 'cause like you said, you have to be able to transition, and sometimes you self-hex yourself through that transition, because I think sports and the importance of play in general is something that is so important to us just as humans and as a society, I think. And then we aren't always given the tools to be able to deal with what comes after. And that's a lot of what my material aims to help with also. The emotional sides of things, because a lot of times that emotional side is also tied to the physical and, back and forth. And that can create injuries as well and leave you susceptible to injuries. And the book and my material goes into how to help yourself with that when you fall into those situations. And then I would say it also teaches players to be kind to themselves in a sense of, you know, while you're playing and then when the game does end for you, and understanding that there's no such thing as glory days unless you get stunted and block yourself from moving forward from, sometimes when the game ends, it is traumatic. And, we have to be able to process through that in a healthy way where we're not ignoring, what we've been through, but come to understand that there is more. And oftentimes, what we have gone through is what leads us to what the more is. It leads us into leadership opportunities, and very, it can be many different ways. But yeah, I would say that there are no such thing as glory days unless you get stuck in the past and you have to keep moving forward. And I think Jim McMahon is a fabulous example of that. And he's he's so happy. Nothing can rattle Jim McMahon. He is just a great example of leadership and sportsmanship and how to have fun and not take life too seriously, to the point that it's a detriment to your health and your gameplay. You have to be able to pick yourself back up, whether that's inside the game or out of it.
And then, like, kind of the one last things I want to ask you was like, as we kind of in here, both for, and I want to direct this towards both coaches and athletes, because again, have a wide variety of offense, mostly audience, not offense, audience. Okay, and most of it is coaches, but again, we get athletes that watch or parents and all that. What words of advice would you have for the athletes or the coaches dealing with energy management issues, like any general advice that you would give them um, as we kind of in this interview?
I would say learn how to shield your energetic body. And even doing just that, which is basically, it's as simple as imagining a big bubble of light around you, just a big circle of light, and learning how to connect with that energy and use it to basically create a shield for yourself for low energy. And as you do that, you're also going to start to realize those little voices in your head, which ones are real and which ones are fake. And it becomes a lot simpler to shut that down. And then that allows belief and confidence to grow even more. So I would say, first things first, learn. And then secondly, in a game time situation, one of the things, especially with young players, that I see is that when they, a play actually goes well, but they didn't go as well as they wanted it to, and then they beat themselves up when in a situation where a good thing has just happened, and you need to build and ride that wave of good, not say, oh dang, I could have had 5 more yards, and then you're cursing yourself because of you missed that. And I see that a lot. And I would say be happy with what you have in those instances and build on those positive points at all times. Don't get stuck, um, unable to rebound from a flub or a bad catch or a missed block. Really being able just to move on and treat it kind of like time trials. How fast can I get over this? How fast can I get over that bad play? And that is going to make a huge difference. Once you get into the groove of it, it really just starts happening automatically. And then you'll see that it's not only happening in the game, it's happening in the game of life as well. So I would say those are the two things.
Okay. No, perfect. I mean, my listeners, make sure obviously check out our channel sponsor, but also um, check out all Mallory's contact information in terms of her Instagram and social media handles will be down below. Her website will be down below. Links to her books, links to Energetic Athletics will be down there. Do we have a tentative release date on the Jim McMahon documentary, or is that still a coming soon section?
Still coming soon at the moment, but I believe it's going to be probably like kickoff of football season. That's what
Okay,
it's looking like right now. But I don't
good.
have a hard date.
Well, that would be a good thing to have at kickoff season. That's probably a good way.
Absolutely.
And I get it, delays happen and all that, and trust me, that's a interesting thing. But again, everybody that interested in our books, like I said, I got two of them. I'm done with the first. I'm done with the curse management, which we talked about today, and kind of curses, and it goes into more detail, obviously, than we talked about today, and kind of the steps of dealing with the curses, both individually and kind of the process from there. But you can also check out her other materials, her other books, and kind of other. I mean, again, she's in the process of producing several movies, and so please check all those out. And otherwise, that's another part of our individual interviews.